Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Tough Questions with Monty. Thanks for joining us again. If you haven't seen the other videos, they're on the YouTube playlist. Search for them. We've looked at suffering so far. We've looked at the reliability of the Bible. We've looked at, we've thought about church and why it's important for Christians. And so tonight, we're in episode 4, as I said. We're looking at other religions. What about other religions? And thanks again to Monty for joining us. We're always appreciative of Monty joining us, but tonight particularly, there's a match on and might hand City the title, so we're particularly appreciative this evening. So thanks for joining us, Monty.
Hurry up.
Sorry?
Hurry up.
Hurry up, yes, yeah, quick, we'll get to it. Well, the question tonight then is what about other religions? So, Monty, we live in a culture that's more and more diverse. I guess many of us at work or at school, we've got friends who are Muslims or Hindu or other religions. I suppose it's quite hard to accept, isn't it, that they're wrong and we're right, isn't it?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it is. It sounds very, very unreasonable. And of course, it was easier to deal with this in the past when we didn't actually know very many Hindus or Muslims. It was something in a different part of the world, and you're right, it's because many of us now have friends who have grown up in or adhere to these other religions that makes us a little unsure as to how we should interact there, because is Christianity just one other religion that mankind has made up? Obviously I believe that's not the case, but it does give us this challenge. And the relationships will always be paramount, and we want to keep those relationships, and maybe we'll come around there at the end again. But I think the important thing to say is that everybody believes that other people are wrong in all sorts of things in life, from the trivial, like are Manchester City the best football team in England, to things that are much more serious, conspiracy theories, vaccine or not to vax. And people on either side of that will think the other side are completely wrong. Very often the people who will say to Christians, how dare you say that you're right and we're wrong, they themselves believe that they are right. So for example, if they believe all religions are the same, they're all made up by mankind, it doesn't matter, or if they believe all religions will lead you to God one way or the other, if I don't believe that, then I'm wrong. So they believe that they are right. Everyone is in that situation. So it's not a case of just drawing the line. It's a case of how you treat people on the other side of the line. We will always be on a different side from friends, acquaintances, work colleagues, people in our classes at school. We will always be on the other side of the line on some issue. And some people will agree with us on religion, disagree with us on politics. Other people will agree with us on politics, disagree with us on morals or sport. And the whole point is, how do we relate across that? We can't eradicate those lines. So we will always believe different things. And I suppose what I want to do is give good reasons why Christianity is God's truth.
Great, thanks. A lot of talk about there of right and wrong. I suppose someone might say, are each of us not just sort of developing a faith that works for me? Development, each of us, each his own.
Yeah. There are cultural elements to it. So it's interesting, the parts of the world that Islam grew up in, the parts of the world that Hinduism grew up in, the parts of the world that animism and traditional African religions took place in. So there are probably great things that sociologists and all will look at there. But the important thing to remember is that Christianity is a global faith that transcends a lot of those cultural boundaries, more so than other religions. Yes, you will get a very, very tiny minority of people from a non-Arab background who will subscribe or convert to Islam. Similarly, those from a non-Asian background who will convert to Hinduism because they like certain aspects of it, or Buddhism. But Christianity has always been a global faith from the earliest days when the apostles went out around the world. It began in the Middle East. It began in the eastern part of the world. And it's growing in the south, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. So it's not a white person's religion, and it has shown itself to be relevant across all the cultures. And I think another thing I would want to say is that the Bible is not oblivious at all to this issue. There were countless other religions at the time of the Bible. In fact, it's a major feature of both Old and New Testament, where there are other gods, and the people of God are judged by God and criticized by God for having other gods, following other gods. And I've been reading recently a passage in Judges where they list all the other gods that the people were following. Gods that were extremely harsh, gods that were unforgiving, where the people never knew if they'd done enough to appease this God. And yet they were worshipping fertility cults. In the New Testament, Paul talks about the Greco-Roman gods. This was, I mean, our hearts are factories of idols. We will make up things to worship if we don't worship the true God. It might be in modern secular terms. It might be sport. It might be sex. It might be a career. It might be money. Whatever it is, we will find something else to worship. And a lot of people believe in the Ten Commandments, and they say they do. They want to follow the Ten Commandments, because they think thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal are pretty good ideas to live in a good society. But what's the first one? You shall have no other gods before me. So the first of the Ten Commandments is that you worship the right God. And so the Bible's not oblivious to this. It's not a cultural thing. It's something that is actually endemic to the human nature. It's inherent in all of us to look for something else to worship if we don't follow the true God.
Great, thanks, Monty. I guess there's that old sort of the saying that we're all climbing the same mountain but going up different paths. Is it not possible that we all have a bit of truth and we're all sort of heading in the same direction?
Yeah. There's the old story. I'm sure maybe many of the young people know it. I've certainly heard it in schools and in universities and read about it. The old fable about the blind man and the elephant. There's several blind men, and they've come across this elephant, and the guy who's feeling the leg thinks, oh, I've got a tree here, and the guy who's feeling the tail thinks, oh, I've got a rope, and the guy who's feeling the trunk says, oh, I've got a snake, and the guy who's feeling the ear says, oh, this is like a sail of a boat. And the point of this whole thing is that, of course, they've all got, so the fable goes, they've all got a little bit of the truth, but none of them actually can see that it's an elephant. Now, that sounds very convincing. Christianity's got this bit right and Hinduism's got this bit right. But the problem with that fable is it makes absolutely no sense, because it's not a case of them all having a bit of the truth. They've all got it wrong. It's not a tree, it's not a rope, it's not a snake, it's not a sail. What they've got, if they put all their wisdom together, wouldn't be an elephant. It would be a tree, rope, snake sail. And so they're all wrong. And the other problem with that fable is that the person who's telling the story very arrogantly decides, I'm actually the only one that can see what it is. It's an elephant. So the secularist, the pluralist who says all religions are the same, they're very arrogantly saying that I have insight that these silly blind people don't have. And that's a very, very presumptuous thing to say. I mean, why, for example, could it not be Christianity saying, I can see it's an elephant? Why does it have to be the secular humanist, the pluralist, who says, it's an elephant? So it doesn't make any sense. It could be that everybody is wrong. And to say that all roads, lead to God, we don't follow that in any other area of life, don't we? It's true that there are 4 roads that lead to Knock Junction. Okay, you can go in 4 directions and end up at Knock Junction. But there's only one road that leads to the front door of Stormont, So which is it? Is Christianity just something like, you're at Knock Junction and you can get there different ways? Or what if it is actually the fact that, like in many areas of life, if you want to get to a destination, there might only be one road to that. So again, it's a presupposition to say that all these roads lead to the same direction. Not all roads lead to where you want to go. Some lead away from where you want to go, and some lead off the edge of a cliff. So you've got to be sure about what road you're actually on, because belief systems do matter. And when we come to other religions, and obviously in this short video, we're not going to have time to look at, take a whole series to look at Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, all of the others. But what I want to show here is the background, the way we need to start thinking about this, because what we believe actually matters. And some beliefs are harmful. So there are elements of a certain branch of Islam that leads to jihad and honor killings. There are aspects of Hinduism that supported the burning of widows on the funeral pyre of their husbands. Now, yes, in modern society, a lot of that is gone, but in some of the more primitive areas, it still happens. And in the past, there were belief systems that led to infanticide, human sacrifice in the past as well. So belief systems can be actually harmful. So how do we make the judgment about what is good and what is true? And yes, people will say, well, Christianity has done some terribly harmful things. What we're talking about here is biblical, Jesus-centered Christianity. We're not talking about churches and Christian states or countries so far, going to war for purposes. We're talking about what the Bible, as it centers on Jesus, talks about. And his teachings and his life brought liberty and freedom to those that were caught up in Roman religions and Greek religions, where there were all sorts of immoral and unethical things happening, as that was actually oppressing women in temple prostitution, that was downtrodden the lower classes and all of that. And it was Christianity that actually turned that whole world upside down. So belief systems do matter.
Great. So I suppose if we've got to this point where we're saying absolute truth is right and that there is right and wrong, what can you help us outline some of the main differences? What sets Christianity apart then between it and the other major religions?
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and I remember an old poem. I mean, it's probably about 35, 40 years old, by a poet called Steve Turner. And it's a poem called Creed, and it's worth reading the whole one, but I'll just read a few lines from it here. It's meant to be a modern creed about what I believe, what my personal religion is. And the line says, we believe that all religions are basically the same. They all believe in love and goodness, and they only differ in matters of creation, sin, heaven, hell, God, and salvation. And so you're suddenly realizing the problem with saying all religions are the same is that there are mutually contradictory things in them. So is God unknowable, or has he made himself known? Are we unique people of unique worth made in the image of God, or are we just disembodied spirits passing through? Will we be reincarnated, or is there a heaven and a hell? Can we find salvation by grace or by observing religious rituals? Did Jesus die and rise again, or did he not? I mean, those are questions that the religions disagree on. So you cannot say that they're both the same. So I would say that the important thing is, who is God? Who are we? How can we get to know God? And those are the three things that Christianity will be unique in. I remember being on a radio show once where asking me about, I think it was one of the Northern Ireland Belfast stations, and they were saying, so tell us about Christianity, because we had a guy in here last week who was telling us all about crystals and how these crystals can heal you and can, you can find your salvation basically in holding these crystals. And I said, well, some things like that might work psychologically for some people, but if that was the universally true way in which we get to know God, Jesus would not need to have come. And I think that's always the case. If we could have got there by obeying 7 pillars of Islam, or if we could have got there by meditation alone, or if we could have got there by observing any sort of religious ritual, even Christian religious ritual, Jesus would not need to have come. The fact that he died was, because there was no other way. And I think that is one of the key things, that if somebody was to ask me and give me one word that shows the uniqueness of Christianity, I would say grace. Grace, that we don't deserve it, we can't earn it, we can't get there, but God in Jesus has made it possible for us, to become his friends. Other religions, if you like, are all the efforts of mankind trying to reach up to this God. Christianity is God reaching down to us when we weren't trying. when we weren't interested, when we were rebelling, reaching down into our world to save us. And that's the primary difference.
Brilliant. Monty, one of the things I've probably appreciated most and found most helpful about this little series we've done is how we've sort of gone through the sort of followed the argument, and then we often finish with some really helpful advice about what to do with this information, how is it going to affect your life. And so I suppose the question to finish on today is similar. How do we take this, and how does this affect the way we interact with our friends and our colleagues, schoolmates, teammates who are from different faith backgrounds?
Absolutely. Well, you don't start just by getting into an argument about religion every time you meet. That's about as productive as trying to convert somebody by social media. I suppose three things. One is you be a true friend. You be a true friend. And this is the Old Testament of whereby the biggest lie in our culture will be that unless you agree with me on everything, unless you affirm me in everything I do and believe, you cannot be my friend. You're rejecting me. That is an absolute lie. As I said, it just doesn't make any sense, because essentially they're rejecting me because I don't agree with them. In fact, friendships are always much more deep whenever you maintain that friendship, even though you disagree on so many things, and you're able to discuss them openly. So just be a good friend. Listen to what they actually believe, because if they're a Muslim, they could be anywhere on the spectrum, from not really practicing their faith at all to being an extremely strict Muslim, and similarly with other religions. So listen to what they actually believe. And don't be afraid, to go with them. If they invite you to something in their religion, it's not a sin to go and to watch and to listen. There's a lovely story in the Old Testament about Naaman after he had been healed of his leprosy. He just says, and may the Lord forgive me. I have to go into the pagan temple with my boss every week. But the Lord forgive me for that, because that's part of my job. Part of being a friend is actually entering into their world and not being afraid of any of that stuff, because be sure of what you believe. And very often you will see and you will think, my goodness, what I have in Jesus is actually so much better than a lot of this stuff where people are trying to understand God and trying to reach out to him. But go and be a very good friend. And secondly, read up a bit on the stuff, the questions that they ask, especially those areas about who is God, who are we, what is our authority, and how do we get to know God, and just look to see where the differences are. And finally, I would say focus on Jesus and the hope that he gives. So be a good friend, learn and listen, and look out for the differences. But also, when you're talking to them, focus on Jesus and the hope he offers. Because when you read the stories, the testimonies of people who have become Christians, and that's the other thing to remember, people who have become Christians from a devout Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist background, you ask them, well, what was it? They said, well, we have nothing like Jesus in our religion. We have no one like him. We have none of this God becoming one of us and understanding what it is to be human, and to take all this stuff that messes up our lives, and to give us hope that we can actually be in an eternal relationship with this God. This grace just does not exist in these other religions. So focus on that, and just talk about Jesus. And I think that will be something that will really hit home and be attractive to anyone.
Brilliant. Monty, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Guys, if you have any sort of follow-up or questions you want to bounce back, please do get in touch and let us know. And also, if you have any more questions or anything else you want Monty to tackle, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to. So thanks very much for listening. Thank you, Monty, and see you later.